Oh my goodness. It's brat summer. Let's get bratty, everybody. Hello, wonderful human beings. I hope you're doing well. Welcome to episode 166 of Restitching the Tapestry. I cannot speak already today. It is officially July 25th, 2024. We are almost at the end of July. Well, actually, we are at the end of July, which it seems a little bit surreal to me, right? I don't know how you're feeling about that. Are you kind of having a crisis over it being the end of July too?
No, because it's getting closer to my Paris trip.
Oh, yes. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, we want time to continue at this pace, which is the usual pace, so you can do your Paris trip. I'm super excited. Oh my
Yes.
goodness. So we have Arby here. Hello, Arby. Landon is here. Hello, Landon. And Landon is counting down 5 months until Christmas. I'm excited about fall specifically because you know me and sweater weather. I love me a pumpkin spice latte
Is
and a
it sweater
cardigan.
weather? It's always sweater weather, isn't it?
I don't know. When it's above 75 degrees, it's tank top weather for me.
It's always cold in my apartment, though. So it's always sweater weather in my apartment.
That's fair. So I guess how have you been and what have you been up to?
How have you been? What have you been up to?
Well, this past week has been interesting because it's the first week that I've had where I've been able to slow down and actually do stuff and be creative and not like freak out over everything. I've been gardening. The other night, I sat out on the patio, I lit a little bonfire, I poured myself a glass of wine, and I did some writing on the patio.
Ooh.
And then I've been doing writing a lot of poetry. I've been putting together some Godzilla comic book proposals that I'm going to be sending out. So
I saw that you wrote a
stuff.
proposal. That
I
was so
know. It's
exciting.
so fun. But yeah, like I've been getting some much needed relaxation. How about you?
Well, first of all, I'm really proud of you for submitting a proposal for your comic book.
Thank
Congratulations.
you. Thank
I
you.
know that you're gonna go far, kid. I just know because what I saw of your comic story that you worked with on IDW was just so super amazing, and I know you've got some great stories in you, and I know that you've got more stories in you. So I'm really
Thank
excited to see
you.
what you've got. Um,
Thank you.
for me, uh, I have been taking the week off because I'm in between classes right now. I start my seminar on writing instruction. So what it becomes like working on what it becomes like what it means to become a teacher next semester term or whatever it's called. Um, I'm really excited about that. I was talking to you about what it meant to become an adjunct after I got
Mm.
my, but I'm not so sure about that because I have all these projects that I've been working on and I've been kind of neglecting them because I've been working on my grad work. So I'm not sure if I'm going to take time off to just work on some of my projects. Like I have a lot of scripts that I've just neglected just because I just do not have the time to work on them, and I kind of just want to start working on my scripts and maybe like working on those projects. Um, Maybe I'll work on teaching eventually, but like I just kind of want to work on some of my stuff because I have like a whole stack of poetry that I just have not typed up, and I have another whole stack of poetry for next year to type up, and I just keep writing, and I have at least 3 collections ready to go in
Oh my
writing that
God.
I just need to type up, and I just and I'm writing all the time, and I just, I it's just like just the amount of stuff that I have that I just need to like focus on getting it down and organized and typed up. Because it's at least two chapbooks and two collections or three collections. I'm not sure which. I haven't decided on how
That's
I'm going to organize
impressive.
it. So yeah, because it's at least, well, I looked at how much poetry that I have in, because I was copying over some of my stuff from my flash drive onto my hard drive because I wanted to back it up. And
Mhm.
from what I've written so far, all of the poetry that I have from just the last few years, I have over 1,000 poems typed up. Um,
That's amazing.
I've written over 1,000 poems in my, and that's about like Emily Dickinson level of writing, where I'm at so far. And that's not even all the stuff that I've typed up, like gotten written down from the poetry I've written in the last couple years. Because I write about 300 poems a year or so. Because I write at least one of these like yellow notebooks every month or so.
Mhm.
And that's
Oh,
about
like a legal pad?
that's about 50 poems a month of legal pads. So 50 poems a month times 12. I mean, that's like a
I was
lot.
gonna say that's more than 300.
I know, yeah.
That's
So,
impressive though. Like I commend that. I think in the last 3 to 4 years, I probably have written 200 to 250 poems. So like that output is phenomenal. Like so
yeah.
now you have at least a lot of content to work with where you can, and it sounds like you have like formed those, you know, collections that, it's just all about putting them out there now, right?
Yeah. And I can see my style changing because I'm looking at my old stuff and the way that I'm editing it, it's editing it towards my new style that I'm doing. So it's I'm changing the old way that the words are the same as how I wrote them before, but I'm
Mm.
writing them in a newer style of how I write. So it's a little bit of old, little bit of new. Um, it's just kind of like modifying them so that they look a little bit better as far as formatting goes. So it's kind of like upgrading them a little bit.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. So, current event snapshot. We got a lot of stuff that like we probably will be spending the next maybe 15 20 minutes talking about current events. So
Mhm.
prepare for that everyone. There's been a lot happening in the last week and a half. So the biggest thing that has happened in the last week uh has been kind of, I don't think this has been something that's happened since like what, the early 70s if memory serves me correctly, but President Biden has chosen to withdraw his nomination as the Democratic presidential candidate for this upcoming election cycle. Um, Upon releasing this message, he immediately endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris, who has since stepped up and has agreed to, and she also achieved, the primary support of becoming the next running candidate for the Democratic Party against former President Trump, right? So the fact that this, I don't, I think some people expected it to happen, and then some people were really surprised by it. Ari, what was your reaction?
I was a little bit unsure because there were several possible candidates. I know people were talking about Gretchen Whitmer running. I know people were talking about other candidates running. I know that Kamala Harris was basically the front runner because Biden had supported her. Um, I was just like, whoever it is, I'm going to support them no matter what because, um, but I was kind of relieved because Biden is so old and he was when I saw the last debate, you could just tell that he was worn down from the presidency, that he just was looking a little tired and that he just I didn't know if he had another 4 years in him. I
Yeah.
was willing to support him regardless, but I wasn't sure if he was going to make it another 4 years because being president is a lot of hard work. It's a lot of strain on mentally and physically and emotionally, and I didn't know I didn't mind supporting him, but I didn't know if he wanted to spend his last few years just being in office like that, if he wanted to
Yeah.
die in office like that. So I'm glad he's stepping down and he's realistic about it that he is going to spend his last few years um maybe alone with his wife and children.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that he's being realistic about it. Perhaps um
I gotta also give major props because I think, like, I know for him, the reason why he kind of held on this long, because he did mention at one point in time that he just wanted to be a one-term president, right? But I know that he mentioned that he stayed on this long because of the gravity of the situation. And of course, I think there was a certain degree of pride. And I think that, like, it was a very huge decision for him to make and a very respectable one for him to make, to step back and be like, okay, this is somebody else's time.
yeah, I think he was just so worried about where the country was going to be headed if he didn't hold on to that banner. And so when you're tired, you don't want to, you want to keep going and pull that because he's one of those people who's just led the country for so long and as a senator and then as a president, that he just takes it upon himself to always be that person who leads. And
Yeah.
so it's just hard because and he's a person who will step down. You have Mitch McConnell who's, as I was thinking, like, as a dichotomy, you have Mitch McConnell who's literally like dying in Congress, passing out and not knowing when to step down.
Oh, yeah. And like having like those moments of like freezing on camera.
And like
And
so he's like holding on like with a death grip. They're like, propping him up and like he doesn't know. He won't refuses to step down, but like
oh,
Biden is going gracefully and saying, this is I'm too infirm. I can't do this anymore. And so
yeah.
as a dichotomy, you have people like Mitch McConnell who's like, oh, yeah,
Well, and like if it came down to it, do you think Trump would actually make this type of decision? No.
absolutely, absolutely not.
Absolutely not. So speaking of him, and then we'll circle back to Kamala Harris in a second, but so Trump has selected JD Vance as his running mate. For those of you who do not know who JD Vance is, he is the author of, I think it's called is it the Hillbilly Elegy? If
Yeah, my
memory
mom
serves me
said it was a
correctly.
good book, and that kind of worried me that she's like I said, "He has no history in politics, and he has" I mean, she's like, "But he's a lawyer." And I said, he's 39 and he has very little political experience." And she's like, "But he wrote a really good book." And I was
Is it a
like
good book? Is it a good book?
and I was
I feel
like,
like that's a matter of taste.
"Okay, whatever."
Okay, what? So the thing here is the thing. So since Kamala Harris has announced that she's running, there has been a huge boom of support. Especially, it's been very evident on social media as well. Um, so it's really funny, and and I'm going to mention this a little bit later after we talk about the next thing. But I think that seeing like the left kind of mobilizing behind Kamala Harris, like that's something the left has not done in quite a long time. There are still a few vocal people, like especially on the far left, who've been kind of critical of her in association with the Biden administration for not taking more action regarding what's been happening in with Israel and Palestine. Um, and I've taken my own self reflection on that, because I feel like we also should be worried about what's happening here in some of the states that are especially being very you know threatening to the LGBTQ plus community specifically, and BIPOC communities. But Speaking of which, there was a pretty major event that happened within the last couple of days. Ari, do you want to talk about that?
So I saw this on Reddit first, and I was like, "Oh, it's just another protest, like whatever." But there was a Palestinian protest in Washington D.C., and I it was kind of a dramatic picture. There was somebody who had like started. I didn't know if it was like a little fire or something like that, but I saw a picture and there was like some fire or something, and then there was just like you know it's TikTok brain rot because, because you get on TikTok and you start, listening to some anti-US rhetoric about Palestine and like, listening to like Osama bin Laden was right and, you know, Hamas is good and stuff like that. And it's like so that you start going to these protests and so they defamed some public artifacts, including a replica of the Liberty Bell, and they were saying things like "abolish the United States" and like Hamas is coming to the United States. And so, like the what's scary about that is like, okay, I understand you may not support Israel. That's fine if you don't support Israel, and like you're allowed your freedom of speech. But like, as far as like you know, the LGBTQ plus community is concerned, like abolishing the United States and saying like you support Hamas, like Hamas and the LGBTQ plus community, like they would like
Mm-hmm.
if you were a far left person, they would basically like not support you. Like you're
Yeah.
supporting somebody who basically would not support your way of life or like how you're living.
So,
And like
well, I think that that was very aptly put. And just to add to that, that my one big here's the one thing that distinguishes the left from the right. I feel like those of us who are of liberal, who are left leaning, we're not afraid to criticize the far reaches of our, stances, like the far left, right? And for me, like, you all know that I've been pretty vocal about what's been happening in Palestine, and I feel like we've been allocating some good discussion during the current event snapshots on the show to that. And I still think that there is a humanitarian crisis, and I still think that it needs to be addressed and fixed. And the current administration, I don't think, has done much for that at all. I
right.
would say that some of these people who are of this stance have been very hypercritical in the sense that, like, well, I don't want to vote for anybody. I'm going to vote third party because of this reality that we're living in. And to me, that type of action, I think, very much sabotages vulnerable communities in our country, like the LGBTQ plus community, like BIPOC communities, where there are specific states where a vote, like abstaining from a vote or voting for a third party, is just kind of emboldening the the peril of what it would be like for a second Trump presidency, if that makes sense. Now, am I saying that Kamala Harris is perfect? I don't think she's perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But she has spoken sympathetically about what's been happening in the Middle East, especially with Palestine. She, when Netanyahu came and spoke to Congress, she deliberately did not come to Congress. She did not go to that speech out of protest. I really think there is potential for action to be taken and meaningful humanizing action to be taken. So, like,
Sorry.
seeing these types of, like, concerning statements being made and the defacing of certain things and very, like, threatening, like graffiti happening, like, that to me is scary. Like, I just think it's a little bit concerning.
Well, the thing is that everybody wants the Gaza war to be clear cut, us versus them. And the thing about it is that it's not an easy conflict to just pick one or the other side. That it's very complicated in that you
Hmm.
have a terrorist organization that is on one side. You have the Palestinian people that's kind of on that same side, and then um, you have Israel, which is trying to defend itself, but at the same time committing genocide against a people. And so
Hmm.
it's not clear cut. It's not easy. It's not an easy situation. You want
Right.
Israel to defend itself, but you don't want it to commit genocide. You want Palestine, the Palestinian people to be safe, but you don't want to support Hamas, which is on that side. And so it's not a great situation all around. It's very
Agreed.
messy and complicated, and it sucks all around.
And I 100% agree. And I think part of the frustration too is like, I feel like as a country, we kind of have internalized this need to like have like this moral superiority, even in situations that we don't fully know, like the ins and outs of something taking place, right? Kind of like what you were saying, like there's such a complexity here that like those who are kind of exerting this moral superiority, like I don't even know if they understand the full complexity of the situation, right? Now, again, I will be honest and say that I do wish that we would take a more active role on the humanitarian front and try to kind of work toward a more reasonable solution that saves as many lives as possible. Do I have hope that with this next administration that would be possible? Absolutely. I feel like it would be a greater likelihood with Kamala Harris than it would be with Trump. And Trump has literally essentially said that he would kind of just let Israel do whatever, right? So, like, I think that we need to look at the realization that our vote is powerful. Like, the vote that we cast, we have to think about, like, who will benefit the most from what vote we select. Now, mind you, I'm not trying to tell anybody who to vote for. That's your right. Vote for whoever you want. But personally speaking, at the end of the day, like I care about human lives, um, and sovereignty, and people having access to rights, and you know, lodging and food. And I think that there is a greater likelihood, um, with one option over the other, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I just knowing what I know about things like Project 2025 and just the what Trump is planning to do if he becomes president again. Just the fact that like talking about getting free access to eliminate his political enemies worries me
Oh,
to the point of where um
yeah,
I would never I just couldn't no, no.
yeah. So, RP says, I'd be down with Pete Buttigieg or Kamala being president. The last thing we need is more Trump. Can you imagine if Kamala Harris was president and Pete Buttigieg was vice president? Like, let's let the BIPOC girlies and the gays run things. Maybe things will get better.
Oh goodness.
So, I think so. Kind of focusing a little bit more on something hopeful. So, like, I know that in the last 4 years, especially, it feels like we've been dealing with one major world altering event over another. What
Yeah.
do you do to keep hope? For me, at the end of the day, I just remind myself that my vote matters, right? And that's my realm of control, and or using a platform to draw awareness to something like we do with this show, right? That is part of
Yeah.
our entire mission statement, right? um do what you have power to do, that is meaningful, that is safe, that is not, a detriment to yourself or others, but like remind yourself that your vote does matter. What about you, Ari? Do you have any like hopeful insight?
I love that. The powers of citizenship, which is your vote, and the powers of freedom of speech, which is putting your opinion out there, regardless of dissenting opinions. But you are allowed your free speech. And I'm not even saying that the people who were doing those Palestinian protests weren't allowed to protest, because they definitely are allowed to protest. But when you start defaming public property and when you start destruction of public property, um, you know, maybe that's a little bit too far. Um, you know, Protesting is one thing, but then when it goes into that realm of impending on the rights of others or impending on the space of others, then it's
Mm.
beyond a certain aspect of things,
Yeah.
um, where you're not just voicing your opinion anymore, you're led to action.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So one final current event snapshot thing that I think is kind of interesting and amusing. So, Kamala Harris is officially on TikTok and has been very much leaning into trends and cultural references, memes, and edits to create a sense of exposure and to create a sense of rallying. And it's actually been taking off. So at the
Cool.
beginning of the episode, I mentioned this is a brat summer. For those of you who are not aware, this is very much a deep cut. It's very near to Charlie XCX,
Yeah.
who is a
Song of the summer.
who isn't she released an album titled Brat. So she tweeted Kamala is brat. And it's not saying that she is a brat, but to be a brat or is essentially like living life to the fullest, being, like imagine sipping wine in a crop top during the summer, listening to club music. That is brat. Right? So, like,
I don't think I would see Kamala Harris in a crop top, but
no, but they like so there was this thing that she said. I think it was last year where she said, "Do you think you fell out of a coconut tree?" And they've been like using that in like memes and stuff to create like a lot of.
I saw
I
a
love
little
the
bit of
internet.
that and it was great.
I love the internet.
Yeah.
And you know what? If this is a way to rally millennials and Gen Z to like take an active role, I think that's great. Why
Yeah.
not? Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, are we ready for the current event snapshot?
Let's just
Or
do
the
it.
show mission statement, not the current event snapshot? All right,
Yes, let's do the mission statement.
it's my turn. We live in a dynamic society where social media shapes us by creating greater opportunities for connection. It has led to a developing understanding of the adversity many marginalized communities face, the powers causing the adversity, and those who act as bystanders as atrocities take place in real time. Our goal with this show is to make connections and have challenging conversations about social topics, current events, pop culture, and art. Together, let's weave the threads of understanding with what privilege we have in order to learn, educate, and create in a world that's growing.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So, tonight's topic is the cost of fame. So, Ari and I have periodically been very fascinated by celebrity culture, pop culture. We've often had many conversations about it, and we wanted to dedicate an entire episode to talking about the cost of fame. And I think the cost of fame is pretty high, and we're going to be unpacking that.
Well, and Donnie can speak from experience because he's now a celebrity.
Donnie cannot speak from experience. Donnie cannot speak from experience. Although when I went to G Fest, I had a few moments where I was just like, "What's happening?"
You definitely are. You're I'm like a Z-list celebrity because they let me on Cameo. So
Did you
I'm
just
like,
say Z list?
yes, like I'm
You
very
were
bottom tier. I'm very bottom tier celebrity.
you were
And
not bottom
you're
tier.
like you're like you're like D tier celebrity now.
I knew something was happening when a couple of people at G Fest asked for like an autograph on something, and I was like they
Definitely.
ripped out a random notepad, and I'm like,
I'm sorry. If you get your ask for your autograph, that means you're celebrity status, my friend. That is celebrity status.
"Where's the house in Malibu? Where is it? Kidding.
You're just D-list celebrity. It's fine. You're not quite up there yet, but if somebody, you're going through the tiers. You're getting up there.
Arpy says, "You guys are A-list celebrities in my book." Thank you. So Ari, have you ever wanted to be famous?
Um, I I didn't want to be famous in that my face was famous, or that like I wanted my name to be famous like in books and stuff, so that I could remain anonymous, like walking around, like so that people didn't like know who I was, like if I was just walking on the street. But like if told somebody, "Hey, I'm Ari Whipple," and they're like, "The writer?" And I'd be like, "Yeah." I'd be like, "I've read all your books."
For me, I used to want to be a singer. I wanted to be like a famous musician.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I initially wanted to do. And then I quickly realized I was like, that might not be for me. So now I've kind of very much romanticized the notion of being a famous writer and like being recognized for my work. I also kind of think of it as like legacy building. Like, what do you want to leave behind in this world? And for me, part of that would be, you know, writing, right? We could have a whole episode dedicated to that in of itself, like
Yeah.
legacy and all of that jazz. But
Oh, the other thing I wanted to do was, I don't know if I want to talk about this. I'm kind of
what did
embarrassed.
you want to do, Ari?
I want to do. I
What
want
do
to
you
be
want
a.
to do?
I want to be a film director.
I want you to be a film director so badly.
Because I want to write scripts and like work. I want to write scripts and I want to learn how to, you know, be a film director. But I've been really embarrassed to talk about this stream. So it's like I'm so obsessed with people like David Lynch and stuff like that. But I'm like, I really just I just want to learn how to do it on my own. I want to learn how to be my own film director and like make my own pictures and
Why are
like
you embarrassed by that? I think
I
that's
don't know,
commendable.
because it's like, oh, you're just like David Lynch. You want to get close to David Lynch so he can just like springboard your own career, and like, no, it's not really what it is.
No, I feel like you, given the opportunity, would be such a talented film director and scriptwriter. I and I don't. I think we've also been kind of conditioned to feel shame over our aspirations and wants.
Yeah,
I cannot begin to tell you how many years I felt ashamed for wanting to be known for writing.
yeah,
And here we are, you and I both have had numerous publications at this point. Like, I think that it's just kind of like this gradual upward momentum, right?
yeah.
Um so speaking of which, how much clout do you have to be considered internet? So there are different levels of fame, right? Like there's like Hollywood A tier list famous, and then there's like internet TikTok influencer famous, right? Or YouTuber influencer famous. So how much clout do you have to be considered internet famous? How much celebrity do you have to have online before you get a certain amount of negative or positive attention? Does your audience need to be very big before you get a certain amount of feedback? I would argue this day and age, it requires something to kind of go viral to some degree.
I've gone viral with only 200 subscribers.
That's fair because I've also gone viral a few times, especially here on YouTube.
Like,
Um,
I had over 12,000 views on a video with 200 subscribers on my tarot channel. And I've gotten over 10,000 views on my Bucha Baby channel that has less than 1,000 subscribers on shorts. I get 10,000 views on my shorts all the time. And like,
mhm.
I don't have very many subscribers on that channel. So I'm like, and I get some hate on that channel every so often. So it's like, how much it's really like, I mean, people go viral all the time and they don't really have like a
Mhm.
many subscribers, and people won't stick around. They'll just have like a bunch of views on one video, and then people won't subscribe to their channel. They'll just have that one video that's like really big.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've experienced something similar. I think for me the one event that really kind of projected my YouTube channel was back in 2012
Hmm.
when that she was a dear friend of mine, Whitney, got bullied at my local high school, and I made a YouTube video about it and it blew up
Yeah.
to the extent where like news stations were like I will never forget. It's galvanized in my brain. I'm like sitting and watching the evening news one night. I don't know if I was working on something or what, but I heard my voice somewhere and I wasn't speaking. I was like, what's going I look up, I'm on TV. Like they were literally playing a segment of my YouTube video on the local news.
Nice.
And like I literally like news stations would show up at work. It was like very unsettling kind of.
Yeah.
Um and we'll probably unpack that a little bit more later, but like that one video like went viral and it's almost gotten 100,000 views.
Yeah.
Um but like it was a very surreal experience. It was a very surreal experience.
It was the beginning of your celebrity, Donnie.
It was a small twinkle of a moment. Um, but do I like? I don't think a celebrity needs to have a lot of following for there to be anything like this to happen. I mean, case in point, Ari and I are examples of that. Where like we've literally had things go viral, and we don't have the following that some of these people do, say, on TikTok or YouTube, right?
Right.
Um, now here's the question. The question of the hour: is fame a good thing or a bad thing?
Ooh, it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag.
It's definitely, I would say that's the best answer. It's a mixed bag.
Because like even with like me being like Z-list celebrity, like being on the bottom tier, right? Um, you get people you get people who like really do um put like being at the bottom and like not even getting like people will really try to put like a marker on your time or like try to you know ingratiate themselves in you and like try to you know assert their will on you about what they think that you should be doing or who they think you are or like what how they think you should be living or like what you should be posting or what you should be doing and like how you should be living or like what like even if I post a video like the criticism I get sometimes of like oh you should be eating like this or you should be doing this or you should be doing this and it's like
Mm-hmm.
or like why aren't you I had somebody the other day posting why aren't you doing weight loss content and I said because I don't feel like it.
Mm-hmm. No, and
You.
I think that's the risk that you take when putting yourself out there, right? Like the you're kind of at the internet's will,
Yeah.
right? With whatever happens. So RP says I think it depends on the situation. I think so too. We'll talk about some scenarios here in a few minutes. And Bianca, hello. We're doing well. How are you doing? Welcome to our show. Um, so I mean, of course, there is the difference between being famous and infamous. Like, I think that we could kind of, draw awareness to that. So, like, my immediate example of infamy would be somebody who gets famous over something horrible, right?
Catch me outside. How about that, girl?
Yeah,
From Phil.
that, yeah, yep.
Dr. Phil.
I'm also thinking of like crime, like people who commit crimes, like typically get very like a lot of exposure, but it's like infamous exposure, right?
Yeah.
Um, there. So who was it?
Oh,
It
Joey
was.
Buttafuoco. I was just thinking about Joey Buttafuoco the other day.
Yep, that's a good example too. Perez Hilton. Do you know who Perez Hilton is?
Oh yeah.
Um, that one internet personality slash influencer who would like who would like be very hypercritical of pop stars, especially at their lowest moments, and would capitalize off that. Like I would consider
Including
that,
Britney Spears.
especially Britney Spears, right? I would
It
say
was
that
true that the
that
Chris Crocker Leave Britney Alone. That was the whole reason why Chris Crocker did the Leave Britney Alone stuff, didn't he?
I think so, if memory serves me correctly, yeah. Um, so another thing, so are there positive aspects to fame?
I mean, of course, like when you get famous, there's a certain amount of um, the spotlight effect in that you can do no wrong, and that certain people who get in the spotlight get treated very well, and that if they get in trouble, they kind of get, a light sentence or lighter sentences or no sentences. Um, when allegations come out about wrongdoings or certain things, they tend to nothing tends to stick to them. Look at Donald Trump. Spotlight effect on Donald Trump. He
Mm-hmm.
always seems to get out of trouble and never seems nothing seems to stick to him. That he just always seems to find that he
Yeah.
always seems to find his way out of trouble. And that even like he never seems to have something that he never seems to end up in jail for the things that he does wrong. When a normal person, if he was a poor black man in the inner city, he would have gone to jail for so many years for all of the stuff that
Mm-hmm.
he's done.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an alarm. So like, there's material wealth, but there's also wealth of privilege too. Like, and I think when you reach a certain celebrity status, there is such a wealth of privilege that it very much serves as a shield against so many different things. And I do think that I mean, it's positive in the sense that it can keep a person very secure, but it's also kind of a double-edged sword in the sense that they're kind of like what you were just saying, Ari. There is like this double standard where like somebody with that level of privilege just is able to get away with so much more.
Well, and they just get so much free stuff when you're famous. People will just give you stuff just in hopes that like you'll showcase it or wear it or like because if especially like influencers or like A-list celebrities, like they get free stuff all the time. Like, come to my restaurant and just show up and I will give you a free meal. Or like wear this outfit because I want to sell this product and you know here's all these free clothes or like here's all these expensive free shoes or like here's all this expensive free product that everybody's like paying thousands of dollars for that you just get for free because you're walking billboard.
Right, yeah, absolutely. Now, if we look at the costs or downsides of being famous, there are quite a few, and I have some examples that I'm going to note. So the first, I think the first downside of fame would probably be lack of privacy. Like, there's a certain point where you are so visible and out there that there's really no way to kind of sequester yourself, and you're kind of always at the whim of like the paparazzi. You're always at the whim of tabloids like commenting, like creating commentary on everything that you do. And I think that like just like there's a level of transparency that kind of seems scary to me, like when you're not able to kind of have any moments to yourself. Like I would say that that is a big one.
Mhm.
um there is kind of like this pressure to speak on every issue or to use one's platform for social causes. I've seen quite a few people, especially on TikTok, get canceled for not drawing enough awareness to what's been happening with the, kind of what we were just talking about, the Israel Palestine conflict, right? Um, and I've seen people like course correct and actually do something about it too, but like I do feel like if you are famous, cancel culture also becomes very much concerning because there is that risk of losing all that you've accumulated, whether
Yeah.
it be material or privilege, um, with the threat of cancellation. Now, do I think that cancel culture can be beneficial in certain contexts? Yes, because I do think that it could encourage educating and allow people opportunities to um, fix themselves. Um,
I just think
so
it's so silly, like, because we have the we were talking about freedom of speech during our current event snapshot, that you have your right, the freedom of speech, but with the things like Miranda rights, you have the right to silence, and so, you know, that's the thing, like, you have the right to silence, but it just getting that consequence of, like, you're gonna get canceled or you're gonna get, you know, you're going to lose your audience because you're not speaking. That's so weird to me. But that as that cost of celebrity, that like people will look on you favorably because you're not speaking on all issues all the time. You know what I mean?
hmm yeah, absolutely. Um, there's also like concerns about like stalking, people like being very invasive in a lot of different situations. Like I remember, like I will never forget, like this was back in like what year was it? Was it 2016? There was a famous YouTube musician who was like being stalked by a fan, and she was murdered at a meet and greet after a concert. Christina Grimmie,
Oh my goodness.
um, by this person who was being very invasive. And I think when you put yourself out there that much, there's also like the risk uh, of bad actors or bad people like making that unhealthy connection, you know,
Yeah.
that parasocial relationship that can happen. um and the other thing, mental health, like I really feel like the issue with celebrity culture and mental health, I think, is people assume that if you are a celebrity, that if you are famous, that you have the privilege and wherewithal to not have mental health like challenges, which I don't think is realistic at all. Um, the example that I think of would be like, I know Linkin Park is one of my favorite bands, and Chester Bennington, who was the singer, took his life back in 2017. Um, and people, I remember the rhetoric, like people assumed that he was doing well, that he had nothing to be miserable about or to be depressed about. And it's like, we may not know what a person's battle is, regardless what their social stature is, right? And
Mhm.
I think when we draw that conclusion, that's kind of a very dangerous thing to do, because it can be very dismissive of the fact that yes, these people are famous, but they are also human beings,
Mhm.
and human being things impact them.
Yeah. I knew how
So
much you really liked Chester.
yeah. Oh, Arby says, yeah, it's been 7 years. It's been 7 years and I still miss him.
Yeah.
I can't believe it's been that long already.
Mhm.
Now, here's the question. Why are there so many costs to being famous?
Because the benefits seems so much bigger. Like the the benefits to being famous, like being rich and being, you know, the glamour of being famous,
Mhm.
seems so much more exciting than the drawbacks of being famous. That like the risk is worth the reward.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think that there's very much like this glitziness to ooh, faint, like faint, you know, and I think that, I mean, we could take this further and talk about the American dream. Like I feel like so much still hinges on like this American dream of like I think the American, so you feel free to disagree with me, Ari, because I'm very curious about your perspective on this. I feel like the American dream used to be that like white picket fence family with, you know, two kids, boy and a girl with a dog, you know, living the suburban life, having a good paying job. But then at a certain point, I feel like,
Are you not
especially,
living the American dream sort of because you have a house and you have, you know, a good
yes,
paying job and you have, you know,
but
all of this.
I feel like to a certain extent the American dream has shifted over the last couple of decades to where
Has it?
I think it's become I think it's become multi-pronged. I
Really?
think there are tracks to it that people tend to glamorize. I think the other track is becoming famous.
Um, I I don't think that I think it's I think it's becoming notor like being I think it's becoming seen, not famous. I think that it's becoming like having social credit.
Hmm.
I don't necessarily think it means being famous. I think it's being having social clout. Um,
Oh, okay.
so like you don't necessarily need to be famous, but like having a lot of people take your opinions and value them. And like
Mm.
taking your perspective and holding on to it and like holding it as like high meaning and like being a respected member of the community and like
Oh.
being like ultimate like getting a lot of comments, getting a lot of views, getting a lot of likes, and like if that means like what it means to be famous, I suppose, but like really it's like having social credit.
Interesting. Because there is privilege in that too, like that social
Yeah.
clout. So like that like I so that's why I think that the American dream takes on many different forms now. Like it can be that suburban dream life, but it
Mhm.
could also be like that suburban or not suburban, but that that well respected acknowledged digital life,
Yeah.
you know, where there is kind of like this pressure of like get followers, get subscriptions, get likes, comments, for the validation of it all.
Or just being like, because you don't even necessarily need to be like the person putting out content. Sometimes it just means being like the top commenter or being like the person who gets like the pinned comment or being like the person who gets like the most likes on a video for your comments. It's
Hmm.
like being the person with the most social credit in a situation.
Interesting. I did not think of that. That's why I posed that question.
'Cause
And
'cause really that's what it is. Because that's a different kind of famous. It's not necessarily the person. Because sometimes you don't have the social energy or the ability to put out content. It's sometimes necessary of, like, getting social yeah, just social
you
credit.
know, now that I think about it too, like the cost of fame is very much tied to consumerism
Mhm.
also, right? Like you just mentioned like creating content. Like I think part of that digital fame or that digital clout that we were just talking about has very much to do with being regular with this content, like creating as much content as you can. Um, and heaven forbid you take a break from it, because if you take a break from it, then you will lose that momentum. You will lose the algorithm, right? I
You'll lose
know,
your social credit.
yeah, like I know, like I personally, I have felt that pressure before.
I
Um,
watched a YouTube video called "Consume or Be Consumed," and it talked about whether or not you watch YouTube videos or create YouTube videos. And there's this fine balance of getting sucked into watching content or creating content, and that people will often try not to get sucked into watching too many YouTube videos by creating their own content.
mhm. Ooh, interesting. Do you feel like you've also struggled with that before too?
Absolutely. Sometimes I'll get out of the cycle of watching YouTube videos by making my own.
Yeah, I've been there too. Like, well, because I think about it, I've I see so many people who will like kind of like take, they call it like social media or digital detoxes,
Yeah.
where they might take a break for a while, right?
Mhm.
Um, and then I think about like I don't think I've done that in years, but then I also remember that it's because I've been kind of like on that role, that like assembly line of like, okay, there is this pressure of continually needing to create. I've gotten to the point now where like, especially, I mean, we've talked about this on the show before, right? Like, where we literally at one point in time would do like dozens of episodes in one span without taking breaks. And then we realized, kind of like what RP just said, it's okay to take breaks. We realized we gotta take breaks for our own well being.
Oh, I took a technology break back in May when I did that meditation retreat, and it got to the point of where my phone reset and all of my passwords logged out.
That's wild.
Yeah, and it was just for a week. Just a week. Everything logged out. And all of my phone wallpapers all reset. I had to redo all my phone wallpapers on my phone.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So, I mean, so has there been a cultural shift regarding drive toward fame? I mean, we did. I feel like there's been, especially with I feel like especially with social media sites like Instagram and TikTok becoming popular, I feel like there's been kind of like this undercurrent of like anti-fame. Does that make sense? Where people have been like very critical of like especially billionaires and like the morality of that level of fame.
What's hilarious about the people who are critical of billionaires are still cultural influencers and still have social credit.
Yep. It's a cruel cycle.
It's a
it's
cruel cycle.
it's a cruel cycle. Um well here
It's like
like
billionaires suck. And I got 10,000 views for it, 100,000 views for it.
it's like
Oh,
there you go.
let
There
me
you
collect.
go.
Let me go collect my money for that video.
Let's go collect that ad revenue. Oh my goodness. But it's so true though. It again it is very much consumerism when you think about it.
Yeah.
It always comes back to that. As much as we do our best to kind of ignore, like I kind of feel like we are able to like, tape a little smile on and be like, "Oh, this really isn't consumerism and capitalism we're talking about," but really it still is. It's
Yeah.
just in some fashions a different form of currency, a social currency, sometimes actual currency too.
Right.
Um so, wow, we're almost at the end here. This has flown by quickly.
I know. I feel like we could do a part 2 to this.
We probably could do a part two. So, even if you aren't famous, what are some steps you can take to be secure online and protect yourself from potential hazards while interacting with people, cultivating a positive social environment?
So, if you are a person who posts anything online, do not post where you are online while you're still there. If you are at a place, do not post while you're at that place while you're still there. Post
Like,
later.
thinking of like the check-in feature on Facebook, right? Like, oh, I'm at
Especially while you're
IHOP, you know.
if you're on vacation, don't tell people you're on vacation while you're on vacation because you can get robbed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like people like bad actors are very savvy with social media too, and they're scouring for that type of thing.
Like
I
unless you have somebody staying at your house or coming to check on your house, don't tell people where you are or where you're going,
mhm,
especially while you're there.
yeah. I think another important thing that is very good for, and I'm still working on this, is creating healthy boundaries for yourself. Um, so, oh, D. Duval is here saying, never do that. I know people that did get robbed in those types of situations. That is scary. Yeah, absolutely. Um, no, I know I had an instance once where like I seldom do like the check-in thing on Facebook anymore. I did it once and I literally had somebody like come find me. And it was like a very uncomfortable experience. I was just like, "Oh, hey, like I don't want to be like, you know." So
Yeah.
it's not worth it. It really isn't worth it. I but
Because you can post your vacation photos, you can post where you are after the fact. You have any time that you can be posting those things.
mhm,
Also, don't post the outside of your building
yeah.
ever. Don't ever post the outside of your house. Don't post your address. Don't post anywhere in front of your address.
Mhm. Definitely. So like going back to the boundary thing, like I think I feel like when social media was young, because I know I look at my memories on some social media sites and I literally would post about everything. I would be
Yeah,
like, I ate this. I feel this way. Like I feel like there's a possibility to like reclaim tidbits of your privacy, right? Like everybody shouldn't have ownership of every single moment of your life, right?
that's what
Like some
journaling
of
is for.
that is exactly what journaling is for. And it's also what therapy is for if you really need that outlet, right?
Right.
Um Ooh, RP asks, would you guys do an episode about setting boundaries? I think that we have that on the list.
Yeah.
For the next season, potentially. I can't remember. I'd have to look back at the list. But no, I think that is a good episode idea.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, creating boundaries, exercising your safety. It's okay to put yourself out there. It can be fun to put yourself out there, but you don't want to risk those negative costs of quote unquote fame, right? Because that might put you in a situation that might not feel good. Ari, do you have any parting words for the evening?
Be safe out there.
Be safe
Make
out there.
make good decisions.
Absolutely. Don't forget, like, we're at the end here. Don't forget to click like for the algorithm. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet. Go subscribe to Ari's channels, Strange Nothings, Tarot Time with Ari, and Boocha Baby. We love you all and have a great rest of your week. Bye.